Imagine for a moment that you could trace your ancestry back not just centuries, but tens of thousands of years. Beyond recorded history, beyond civilization itself, to a time when our species wasn't alone. The genetic ghosts of another kind of human still walk within you. Every time you look in the mirror, subtle features stare back that aren't entirely Homo sapiens. When you fight off certain diseases, ancient immune responses activate that weren't originally ours. Your very DNA carries the whispers of encounters that occurred in firelit caves and forgotten valleys, some 50,000 years ago. Encounters between your direct ancestors and another human species entirely. The Neanderthals? These weren't the brutish, club-wielding caricatures we've imagined. They were sophisticated beings with larger brains than ours, capable of art, complex tool-making, and possibly even language. And at some point in our shared history, they became more than just neighbors. They became lovers, partners, and parents to hybrid children who would carry both lineages forward through time. When scientists first sequenced the Neanderthal genome in 2010, they discovered something remarkable. People of European and Asian descent carry between 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. This wasn't just a scientific curiosity, it was evidence of intimate contact between two distinct human species, a genetic signature of encounters that would forever change the course of human evolution. The implications are profound. We didn't simply replace our evolutionary cousins as we spread across the globe from Africa. We absorbed them, incorporated their genetic adaptations, and carried them forward. Tonight, we explore one of humanity's most intimate mysteries: how mating with Neanderthals changed us forever, and how those ancient encounters continue to shape who we are today. What traits did we inherit? How frequent were these matings? And perhaps most intriguingly, what does the Neanderthal within us reveal about what it truly means to be human? The answers lie hidden in the double helix of your DNA, in archaeological sites across Europe and Asia, and in cutting-edge genetic research that's revealing the lingering impact of these prehistoric liaisons. This is not merely ancient history. It's your history written in the cellular code that constructs every part of your body. The legacy of these encounters shapes how you respond to pathogens, how your skin reacts to sunlight, and possibly even aspects of your brain. Scientists are now identifying specific Neanderthal genes linked to everything from pain sensitivity to immune response, skin pigmentation to brain development. Some of these inherited traits helped our ancestors survive. Others may contribute to modern diseases. For decades, anthropologists debated whether Homo sapiens and Neanderthals could even produce viable offspring. Many insisted the two species were too evolutionarily distant to interbreed successfully. They were wrong. The evidence now shows that not only did our species interbreed, but the resulting hybrid children were healthy enough to pass those genes down through countless generations to reach you today. This revelation forces us to reconsider fundamental questions about human identity. Where do we draw the line between us and them when they are literally part of us? What we're discovering challenges our most basic assumptions about human uniqueness and evolutionary history. It suggests that hybridization, the merging of separate lineages, may be a fundamental force in human evolution. And there's another mystery hidden in our genetic code. Patterns in our DNA suggest we may have mated with other archaic humans whose fossils we haven't even discovered yet, ghost lineages known only through their genetic echoes. What drives these interspecies attractions? Was it mere opportunity or something deeper? Did our ancestors recognize something familiar yet different in Neanderthal eyes? Something that spoke to them across the species boundary. As we journey through the evidence tonight, we'll explore not just what happened, but why it matters, how these ancient genetic inheritances continue to influence human health, abilities, and perhaps even behavior in the modern world. This is a story of boundaries crossed and worlds merged, a tale written not in books, but in blood and bone, and the microscopic coils of DNA that connect us to ancestors we never knew we had. It's a scientific detective story that begins with a simple question. What does it mean that we carry the genes of another human species within us? And it leads to an even more profound inquiry. Are we truly who we think we are? So settle in as we travel back to a time when multiple human species shared the Earth, and forward to the cutting-edge laboratories where scientists are unlocking the secrets of our mixed heritage. The Neanderthals didn't simply vanish. Parts of them live on in you. Chapter 2. The Intimate Stranger Within. What does it mean to be human? For centuries, we've defined ourselves against the backdrop of what we are not animal, not machine, and certainly not Neanderthal. But the genomic revolution has rewritten this narrative. The stark boundary we imagined between ourselves and our evolutionary cousins has dissolved under the cold light of genetic evidence. When researchers first suggested that modern humans carried Neanderthal DNA, many in the scientific community were skeptical. The implications seemed too radical, too disruptive to establish theories of human uniqueness. Today, that initial discovery has been confirmed many times over. If you have European or Asian ancestry, approximately 1 to 4% of your genome originated not in Africa with early Homo sapiens, but in the bodies of Neanderthals. This isn't abstract scientific trivia. These genetic inheritances influence how your immune system functions, how your skin responds to environmental conditions, how your body metabolizes food, and possibly even aspects of your brain structure. Imagine the stakes of this revelation. Our understanding of what makes us distinctly human must now account for the fact that we are, in part, not entirely human, at least not in the way we've traditionally defined ourselves. The Neanderthal sequences in your genome aren't randomly distributed. They cluster around specific functional regions, suggesting these inherited genes provided adaptive advantages that natural selection preserved across thousands of generations. Some of these genes bolstered our immune systems, helping our ancestors fight off novel pathogens as they migrated into new environments. Others influenced skin and hair characteristics that may have helped adaptation to colder climates. Consider the profound implications. Without these genetic exchanges, human history might have unfolded very differently. Our species might have struggled to adapt to Eurasian environments, might have succumbed to unfamiliar diseases, might have developed along an entirely different trajectory. The legacy of these prehistoric encounters extends beyond physical traits. Some research suggests Neanderthal genes may influence neurological development, potentially affecting behavior, cognition, and susceptibility to conditions like depression and addiction. What's at stake is nothing less than our conception of humanity itself. Are we a distinct species with a linear evolutionary history? Or are we a mosaic, a living synthesis of multiple human lineages that once walked the earth alongside us? The stakes extend into medicine as well. Understanding which parts of our genome come from Neanderthals may help explain why certain populations are more susceptible to specific diseases or respond differently to particular treatments. Consider this remarkable finding. During the COVID-19 pandemic, researchers discovered that a genetic region inherited from Neanderthals could either increase or decrease risk of severe disease, depending on the specific variant inherited. This suggests that the legacy of these ancient matings continues to shape matters of life and death today, thousands of generations after those encounters took place in the dim light of prehistory. Beyond medicine, these discoveries challenge our most fundamental narratives about human superiority and exceptionalism. We didn't simply outcompete other human species, we incorporated them into our very being. The philosophical implications are profound. Significant portions of what makes us us came from beings we once considered fundamentally other. How should we reconsider our relationship to the rest of life on Earth? Perhaps most provocatively, the evidence suggests these interspecies matings weren't rare accidents. The pattern and prevalence of Neanderthal DNA indicate multiple episodes of interbreeding across different times and regions. What might this tell us about human nature itself? Perhaps the boundaries we construct between us and them are more permeable than we imagine, not just culturally, but biologically as well. And there's an even more speculative question. Did these genetic exchanges give us cognitive or behavioral advantages that helped Homo sapiens become the last human species standing? Did we, in essence, absorb the best adaptations of our cousins? The stakes of this investigation extend into how we understand human variation today. If we are all hybrid beings to some degree, carrying genetic contributions from multiple human lineages, how should this inform our thinking about race and human differences? For centuries, we've drawn sharp distinctions between supposedly separate human groups. Yet genomics reveals a more complex story of populations mixing and merging throughout our evolutionary history, with Neanderthal interbreeding as just one chapter. As we delve deeper into this genetic legacy, we must confront a startling possibility. What we consider uniquely human may in fact be a mosaic of adaptations and innovations that evolved in different human species and were later combined. Our creative capacity, our technological prowess, our adaptability, these defining human traits, may have emerged not in isolation, but through the blending of distinct evolutionary lineages, each with their own specialized adaptations. When you consider just how recently these discoveries have been made, primarily in the past decade, it becomes clear we're only beginning to understand the full implications of our mixed ancestry. Each year brings new revelations. Recently, researchers have identified Neanderthal genes that influence pain perception, immune response to certain viruses, and even skull shape in modern humans. The stakes of this investigation are personal as well. The Neanderthal within you is not a distant scientific abstraction. It's a living reality that influences your body's functions every day, from how you respond to infections to how you metabolize food. What would change if we fully embraced this hybrid identity? How might it alter our understanding of human nature if we recognized ourselves as the product of multiple evolutionary experiments that ultimately merged into one? These questions aren't merely academic. They strike at the heart of who we are and how we relate to our evolutionary past. They challenge us to reimagine humanity, not as a singular triumph, but as a genetic conversation spanning tens of thousands of years. Chapter 3. When two worlds collided to understand the significance of Neanderthal-human interbreeding, we must first travel back to a world fundamentally different from our own, a world where multiple types of humans shared the planet, each adapted to their particular environments. Approximately 700,000 years ago, the evolutionary lineages that would become Neanderthals and modern humans split from a common ancestor, likely Homo heidelbergensis. These populations then evolved separately for hundreds of millennia. The Neanderthal lineage moved into Europe and Western Asia, adapting to the harsh conditions of Ice Age Eurasia. Their bodies grew robust and powerful, with barrel chests, shortened limbs, and enlarged nasal cavities, all adaptations to cold climates. Meanwhile, the lineage that would become Homo sapiens remained in Africa, developing in warmer environments. Our bodies became taller, more slender, and better adapted for dissipating heat in tropical conditions. But the differences weren't just physical. Both species evolved. Their brains developed along somewhat different paths. Neanderthals actually possessed slightly larger brains than modern humans, though with different proportions and neural organization. For hundreds of thousands of years, these two human species developed in isolation from each other, each becoming exquisitely adapted to their respective environments, each developing their own cultural traditions and technological approaches. Then, approximately 60,000 years ago, something momentous occurred. Small bands of Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa, venturing into territories where Neanderthals had been the sole human inhabitants for countless generations. Imagine that first encounter. Two groups of humans, separated by hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution, coming face to face. Different in appearance, perhaps in language, in tools, and customs, yet recognizably similar. The archaeological record suggests these early meetings weren't immediately catastrophic for either species. For thousands of years, Neanderthals and modern humans apparently coexisted in the Middle East, and later across parts of Europe and Asia. What transpired during these encounters? The evidence suggests complex interactions. In some locations, we find signs of cultural exchange, with Neanderthals adopting techniques or ornamental styles that may have originated with Homo sapiens. But more intimately, at some point, these encounters led to mating. We don't know the exact circumstances, whether these were cases of peaceful integration between groups, individual love stories, or more troubling scenarios of conflict and capture. What we do know is that these matings produced viable offspring who were healthy enough to reproduce, passing their mixed genetic heritage down through the generations until it reached people alive today. The timing and frequency of these interbreeding events remain subjects of ongoing research. The current evidence suggests multiple episodes occurred, not just a single hybridization event. Spanning from approximately 50,000 to 30,000 years ago. Interestingly, we found no evidence of Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA in modern humans. Since mitochondrial DNA passes only from mother to child, this suggests the successful pairings were primarily between Neanderthal men and Homo sapiens women. Why this pattern exists remains unclear. Perhaps cultural factors influence these pairings, or perhaps hybrid offspring of Neanderthal mothers faced biological challenges that prevented their lineages from surviving to the present day. These hybridization events occurred against a backdrop of environmental challenges. Many took place during the last ice age, when conditions in Europe and Asia were dramatically harsher than today. Picture vast glaciers covering much of northern Europe, with tundra and steppe environments extending far south. Animal herds migrated seasonally across these landscapes, followed by the human groups that depended on them for survival. In this harsh world, genetic adaptations could mean the difference between survival and extinction. And Neanderthals, having lived in these environments for hundreds of thousands of years, possessed genetic adaptations that newcomers from Africa lacked. Their immune systems had evolved responses to local pathogens. Their bodies were adapted to cold conditions and limited sunlight. They knew the local plants, animals, and seasonal patterns with an intimacy born of countless generations. For Homo sapiens, moving into these unfamiliar territories, incorporating some Neanderthal adaptations through interbreeding may have provided significant advantages, a genetic shortcut to environmental adaptation. Rather than waiting for natural selection to favor beneficial mutations over many generations, hybrids could immediately benefit from adaptations Neanderthals had developed over hundreds of thousands of years of European evolution. This may help explain why natural selection appears to have favored certain Neanderthal genes related to immunity, skin function, and metabolism in modern human populations outside Africa. As these early hybrid offspring reproduced with other Homo sapiens, their descendants would carry diminishing percentages of Neanderthal (KV), but beneficial Neanderthal genes would be preserved by natural selection across the generations. Yet something else was happening simultaneously with these genetic exchanges. Between approximately 40,000 and 30,000 years ago, Neanderthal populations began to decline, eventually disappearing entirely from the fossil record. The causes of their extinction remain debated. Climate change, competition with Homo sapiens for resources, direct conflict, disease, or simply absorption through interbreeding, all have been proposed as contributing factors. What's clear is that within about 10,000 years of first contact with Homo sapiens, a human species that had successfully inhabited Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years had vanished, but they didn't disappear completely. Through those episodes of interbreeding, parts of their genetic legacy survived, incorporated into the genome of their former competitors, preserved and passed down across the millennia. In a sense, two distinct evolutionary experiments in being human, one optimized for European environments over 300,000 years, the other, emerging from African origins, merged to create something new. The result was not the complete replacement of one human type by another, as scientists once believed. but rather a complex genetic conversation between lineages. A sharing of adaptations across what we once thought were impermeable species boundaries. Chapter 4. The genetic receipts for most of the 20th century. Paleoanthropologists debated whether Neanderthals and modern humans had interbred. Without direct evidence, the question remained unresolved, with most scientists leaning toward the replacement model, the idea that modern humans had simply outcompeted and replaced Neanderthals without significant interbreeding. Everything changed in 2010 when an international research team led by Svante Pääbo at the Max Planck Institute published the first draft of the Neanderthal genome, painstakingly reconstructed from ancient bones. Their findings sent shockwaves through the scientific community. When they compared the Neanderthal genome to those of modern humans from different regions, they discovered unmistakable evidence of interbreeding. People of European and Asian descent carried genetic sequences that matched Neanderthal DNA, while those with purely African ancestry did not. This pattern perfectly matched what would be expected if interbreeding occurred after humans migrated out of Africa. The initial estimate suggested that non-African humans derived approximately 1 to 4% of their DNA from Neanderthal ancestors. This may sound small, but it represents thousands of genetic sequences affecting numerous biological functions. Subsequent research has refined and expanded these findings. We now know that different populations carry slightly different amounts of Neanderthal DNA, with East Asians typically having a bit more than Europeans. This variation suggests multiple episodes of interbreeding, not just a single hybridization event. It appears that as modern humans spread across Eurasia, they encountered and mated with Neanderthal groups in different regions at different times. The evidence became even more compelling as scientists identified specific Neanderthal genes and their functions in modern humans. These weren't just random fragments of junk DNA. They were functional genes that continue to influence human biology today. One of the most striking patterns emerged around immune system genes. Modern humans appear to have retained Neanderthal gene variants that helped fight off pathogens in European and Asian environments. For our African ancestors, moving into Eurasian environments meant encountering unfamiliar diseases. Neanderthals, having evolved there for hundreds of thousands of years, had already developed genetic adaptations to these local threats. Interbreeding provided a shortcut to acquiring these immunological adaptations. Hybrid offspring who inherited Neanderthal immune genes gained protection against local pathogens, giving them a survival advantage. This is precisely the pattern we would expect from natural selection acting on hybrid populations: the preservation of beneficial genes from both ancestral sources, regardless of their origin. Scientists also discovered Neanderthal influences on skin and hair biology in modern humans. Several Neanderthal genes affecting keratin, a protein essential for skin, hair, and nails, persist in modern populations. These skin-related adaptations may have helped our ancestors adjust to the different environmental conditions of Eurasia, including reduced sunlight, colder temperatures, and different ultraviolet radiation levels. More surprisingly, researchers found that some Neanderthal DNA influences brain development and function in modern humans. These include genes involved in the formation of synapses, the connections between brain cells. What might this mean for human cognition? We don't yet have definitive answers, but it raises the tantalizing possibility that some aspects of how we think and perceive may carry the imprint of our evolutionary cousins. Not all Neanderthal genetic contributions have been beneficial. Some inherited sequences appear to increase risks for certain diseases, including depression, blood clotting disorders, and skin lesions when exposed to sunlight. This mixed legacy makes evolutionary sense. Genes that were adaptive in Ice Age Europe may become problematic in modern environments, or when separated from the genetic context in which they originally evolved. The distribution of Neanderthal DNA in our genomes tells another fascinating story. These sequences aren't randomly scattered, but show distinct patterns that reveal the dynamics of natural selection acting on hybrid populations. Certain parts of our genome contain virtually no Neanderthal DNA, particularly on the X chromosome and in genes expressed in male testes. This suggests hybrid males may have faced reduced fertility, a common phenomenon when related species interbreed. Other regions show higher than expected concentrations of Neanderthal DNA, suggesting these genes provided adaptive advantages that natural selection favored and preserved across thousands of generations. The scientific detective work needed to identify and interpret these genetic patterns has been remarkable. Researchers must distinguish between sequences that are similar due to common ancestry and those that indicate actual interbreeding. The smoking gun comes from long segments of DNA that match Neanderthal sequences too precisely to be explained by shared ancestry from hundreds of thousands of years earlier. These represent direct inheritances from relatively recent interbreeding. As technology advances, we're identifying ever more specific Neanderthal contributions. In 2020, researchers pinpointed a Neanderthal gene variant that affects pain sensitivity in modern humans carrying that sequence. Another discovery revealed Neanderthal genes that influence how modern humans respond to SARS-CoV-2, the virus causing COVID-19. Some variants increase susceptibility to severe disease, while others may offer protection. These findings remind us that our ancient genetic inheritance continues to shape our lives today, in ways both subtle and profound, from how we fight infections to how we experience pain. Perhaps most intriguing are the Neanderthal genes that may influence brain function. These include genes involved in the development of the cerebral cortex, the brain region responsible for our highest cognitive functions. What might this mean? Did interbreeding with Neanderthals alter how our ancestors thought, perceived, or processed information? Did it contribute to the cognitive and cultural explosion that occurred in early modern humans after they left Africa? We may never fully answer these questions, but the evidence increasingly suggests that what makes us uniquely human may not be entirely of human origin. Our distinct cognitive abilities may represent a synthesis of multiple evolutionary lineages. The discovery of Neanderthal genes in modern humans also forced a reconsideration of what constitutes a biological species. If two populations can interbreed and produce fertile offspring, are they truly separate species? By the traditional biological species concept, the ability to produce viable, fertile offspring defines a single species. By this definition, were Neanderthals and Homo sapiens different species at all, or merely divergent populations of the same species? This seemingly technical question has profound implications for how we understand human uniqueness and the boundaries of humanity itself. The more we learn about our shared genetic heritage, the more these boundaries blur. But the genetic evidence doesn't stop with Neanderthals. In another shocking discovery, researchers identified DNA from yet another archaic human species in modern populations, the Denisovans, known only from a few fossils in Siberia. People of Melanesian descent carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA, while smaller amounts appear in many Asian populations. Some Tibetans inherited a Denisovan gene variant that helps them survive at high altitudes with lower oxygen levels. These findings suggest our ancestors interbred with multiple archaic human species as they spread across the globe, acquiring beneficial adaptations from each. Rather than a simple replacement of archaic humans, a complex genetic exchange occurred. The implications are staggering. Our species appears to have succeeded not through isolation and superiority, but through genetic exchange and incorporation of beneficial traits from multiple human lineages. What other genetic legacies might we carry from extinct human species? What ghost populations, known only through their genetic echoes in our DNA, might have contributed to making us who we are today? The technology to answer these questions is advancing rapidly. New methods for extracting and analyzing ancient DNA are revealing ever more detailed pictures of our mixed ancestry and the legacy of those ancient encounters. But a profound mystery remains. As we uncover more evidence of our hybrid origins, we must confront the central paradox. If we contain the genetic heritage of multiple human species, what does it truly mean to be Homo sapiens? Chapter 5. The fragments that don't fit, despite the compelling genetic evidence for interbreeding between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Numerous contradictions and anomalies remain unexplained. These inconsistencies challenge our understanding and suggest the story is far more complex than we initially believed. One of the most perplexing contradictions involves timing. While genetic data suggests interbreeding occurred around 50,000 to 30,000 years ago, fossil evidence of potential hybrids doesn't perfectly align with this timeline. The famous Lagar-Vallejo child, discovered in Portugal, a 24,000-year-old burial of a 4-year-old with what some anthropologists interpret as mixed Neanderthal and modern human features, appears thousands of years after Neanderthals supposedly disappeared from the region. Either Neanderthals survived longer than we thought in isolated pockets, or their genetic influence persisted in certain populations at higher concentrations for thousands of years before gradually diffusing through the broader human gene pool. Another contradiction emerges when we examine the geographic distribution of Neanderthal DNA in modern populations. East Asians carry slightly more Neanderthal DNA than Europeans, despite Europe being the Neanderthal heartland. This pattern seems counterintuitive. If interbreeding occurred primarily in Europe, shouldn't Europeans show the strongest Neanderthal genetic signal? The fact that East Asians carry more Neanderthal ancestry suggests a more complicated migration and mating history. One possible explanation is that early European populations experienced later migration events that diluted their Neanderthal ancestry. Another is that selection pressures varied across regions, preserving different amounts of Neanderthal DNA. Even more puzzling is the distribution of specific Neanderthal gene variants. Some populations carry Neanderthal sequences that aren't found in the limited number of Neanderthal genomes we've managed to sequence. This suggests either that we've only sampled a small, unrepresentative portion of Neanderthal genetic diversity, or that some sequences entered the human lineage from Neanderthal populations we haven't yet discovered. The fossil record itself presents contradictions. Despite evidence of coexistence lasting millennia, we've found remarkably few fossils that show clear evidence of hybridization. Where are all the physical remains of these hybrid individuals? Some anthropologists point to specimens like the Oase-1 mandible from Romania, dated to about 40,000 years ago, which shows a mixture of modern human and Neanderthal features, and has yielded DNA confirming a Neanderthal ancestor within 4 to 6 generations. But such specimens remain exceptionally rare. If interbreeding was common enough to leave a detectable genetic signature in all non-African populations today, shouldn't we find more fossil evidence of these hybrid individuals? This scarcity might be explained by the poor preservation of fossils generally, or it might indicate that while interbreeding occurred, it remained relatively uncommon, with just enough frequency to leave a genetic legacy, but not enough to create a distinct hybrid population. Another anomaly concerns the patterns of gene flow. The evidence suggests gene flow was primarily unidirectional from Neanderthals into modern humans, not the reverse. Modern human DNA doesn't appear significantly in late Neanderthal genomes. Why would this be the case? The two groups were interbreeding. Shouldn't genetic material have moved in both directions? This asymmetry requires explanation and suggests complex social dynamics between the groups. One possibility is that hybrid offspring may have been more readily accepted into modern human groups than Neanderthal ones, leading to the incorporation of Neanderthal genes into the Homo sapiens lineage, but not vice versa. Another contradiction emerges when we examine how quickly Neanderthals disappeared after contact with modern humans. If the relationship included significant interbreeding and cultural exchange, why did Neanderthals vanish so completely within a relatively short time frame? Did our ancestors simultaneously mate with Neanderthals while also competing with them to extinction? Or does the disappearance of pure Neanderthals represent more of an absorption through interbreeding rather than a replacement through competition? The genetic evidence itself contains puzzling anomalies. Certain regions of our genome are entirely devoid of Neanderthal sequences, particularly the X chromosome. This pattern suggests hybrid males may have had reduced fertility. This phenomenon, known as hybrid male sterility, is common in other species when related but distinct populations interbreed. It results from genetic incompatibilities that specifically affect male fertility while allowing female hybrids to reproduce normally. If male hybrids between Neanderthals and modern humans often faced fertility challenges, how did enough interbreeding occur to leave a substantial genetic legacy? This suggests either that the reproductive barriers were incomplete or that interbreeding was more frequent than we've assumed. Perhaps the most significant anomaly is what geneticists call desert regions. Large stretches of the modern human genome that contain virtually no Neanderthal sequences, suggesting these regions were actively selected against in hybrid offspring. What made these Neanderthal sequences so disadvantageous that they were completely purged from the human genome? And what does this tell us about the biological compatibility of the two populations? The genes within these desert regions often relate to brain development, male fertility, and certain immune functions. Their absence suggests hybrids carrying Neanderthal versions of these genes may have faced significant biological challenges. Another puzzling aspect involves the survival of specific Neanderthal genes related to brain function. Why would some Neanderthal neural genes be preserved while others were eliminated? What cognitive effects might these preserved genes have on modern humans? Some researchers suggest these preserved neural genes may influence traits like pain perception, mood regulation, or specific cognitive functions, but determining the precise effects remains extraordinarily difficult with current technology. Intriguingly, some Neanderthal gene variants associated with mood disorders like depression appear at measurable frequencies in modern populations. Does this represent an unfortunate side effect of otherwise beneficial genes? Or did these variants serve some adaptive purpose in ancient environments? The distribution of Neanderthal DNA across different modern populations presents additional anomalies. Certain isolated populations show unexpected patterns, suggesting complex histories of migration, isolation, and subsequent mixing. For instance, the Melanesian populations who carry significant Denisovan DNA also retains distinct patterns of Neanderthal ancestry that differ from mainland Asian populations. This suggests multiple waves of prehistoric contact and interbreeding events. Perhaps the most profound anomaly is what this interbreeding tells us about the nature of species boundaries in human evolution. If Neanderthals and Homo sapiens could interbreed successfully, were they truly separate species? Traditionally, species are defined as populations that cannot produce fertile offspring together. By this definition, the evidence of successful interbreeding challenges the very idea that Neanderthals and modern humans were distinct species. Yet their long, separate evolution, roughly 500,000 years of divergence, created populations different enough in appearance, genetics, and likely behavior that most biologists would classify them as separate species, or at least subspecies. This creates a taxonomic contradiction. Populations different enough to classify as separate species, yet similar enough to produce viable, fertile offspring. This anomaly forces us to reconsider how we define species boundaries in human evolution. Perhaps most puzzling is the question of what drew these different human types together in the first place. What overcame the obvious physical differences and potential cultural barriers to result in intimate relationships between these distinct populations? Was it mere opportunity, deliberate exogamy, curiosity about the other, or perhaps even strategic alliances between groups? The motivations behind these prehistoric liaisons remain largely speculative. These contradictions and anomalies don't invalidate the evidence for interbreeding. Rather, they reveal the complexity of the interactions between ancient human populations and challenge us to develop more nuanced models of human evolution. As we continue to uncover new evidence, these apparent contradictions may resolve into a more coherent picture, or they may lead us toward even more surprising revelations about our tangled evolutionary past. Chapter 6. Whispers across time throughout human history. Myths and legends have often contained kernels of truth, cultural memories, of real events transformed through countless retellings. Could some of our oldest stories contain echoes of a time when different types of humans shared the earth? Folklore across Eurasia contains recurring themes of encounters with beings who are almost, but not quite, human. These others typically dwell in wild places, mountains, forests, caves, precisely the marginal environments where Neanderthals may have persisted longest. Consider European tales of wild men or woodwoes, hairy, powerful beings dwelling in forests. These figures appear in medieval art and literature, but likely draw on much older oral traditions stretching back into prehistory. Indigenous Siberian peoples tell stories of chukuna, wild forest dwellers described as large, covered in hair, wearing animal skins, and capable of using simple tools. The parallels to what we know of Neanderthal appearance and lifestyle are striking. Aboriginal Australian traditions speak of the Jugubina, a race of stocky, powerful beings who lived in the mountains and interbred with humans. Australia never had Neanderthal populations, but these stories may preserve memories of encounters with other archaic humans. Native American folklore includes numerous traditions of wild people or stick Indians living in remote areas, while Neanderthals never reached the Americas. Similar stories worldwide suggest cultural memories of times when modern humans weren't the only human species. These mythic parallels don't prove direct memories of Neanderthals survived in oral tradition for tens of thousands of years, but they suggest the psychological impact of encountering almost humans leaves a profound imprint on cultural consciousness. In Europe, where Neanderthals lived for hundreds of thousands of years, legends of dwarves, trolls, and giants have persisted across cultures. These beings are typically portrayed as ancient, powerful, skilled in crafts, and dwelling underground or in mountains. Norse mythology describes the Jitnir primordial beings who existed before gods and humans. While often portrayed as giants, their essential characteristic is their ancient, primeval nature, beings from an earlier age of the world. Celtic traditions speak of the Fomorians, an ancient race described as misshapen, powerful, and predating the arrival of humans in Ireland. Some scholars have suggested these myths might preserve cultural memories of encounters with non-modern human groups. Biblical references to Nephilim and other archaic peoples have prompted some researchers to speculate whether these texts contain distorted memories of times when multiple human species coexisted and occasionally interbred. The recurring theme in these traditions is a sense of otherness that is simultaneously human and non-human beings, recognizable enough to interact with, sometimes mate with, yet fundamentally different in appearance, behavior, or origin. Beyond myths, the archaeological record contains puzzling evidence that doesn't fit neatly into our understanding of Neanderthal-human interactions. Some artifacts and sites suggest more complex relationships than simple replacement or competition. Ripa Bombrini in Italy. Archaeologists found layers of Neanderthal occupation directly overlaid by modern human settlements, with evidence suggesting the two groups used the same site within a relatively short time frame. At several European sites, archaeologists have discovered what appears to be a transitional culture called the Chattelperonian, which combines elements of typical Neanderthal technology with innovations previously associated only with modern humans. This raises intriguing questions. Was the Chattelperonian created by Neanderthals who adopted modern human techniques through cultural exchange? Or does it represent the material culture of hybrid populations with mixed ancestries and traditions? The famous Lion Man figurine from Germany's Hohenstein-Stadel cave dates to about 40,000 years ago, during the period when modern humans and Neanderthals coexisted in Europe. This remarkable sculpture combines human and animal features in a way that transcends species boundaries. Could such conceptual blending the imagination of hybrid beings reflect a worldview shaped by awareness of human biological diversity, including encounters with Neanderthals. Did the experience of interbreeding influence how our ancestors conceived of transformation and identity? Cave paintings from this period occasionally depict human figures with ambiguous features that some researchers interpret as potentially showing Neanderthal characteristics or mixed traits. These interpretations remain controversial but intriguing. At Krapina in Croatia, a site containing numerous Neanderthal remains, researchers have found evidence of what appears to be ritual modification of Neanderthal bones after death. This suggests complex interactions beyond mere competition or avoidance. Perhaps most provocatively, some archaeological evidence suggests Neanderthals themselves created symbolic artifacts, including cave paintings in Spain that predate modern human arrival in Europe and perforated shells apparently used as jewelry. This evidence challenges the long-held assumption that symbolic thinking was unique to Homo sapiens. If Neanderthals possessed similar cognitive capacities, the psychological gap between our species may have been smaller than traditionally assumed. Genetic evidence offers its own out-of-place findings. Some Neanderthal DNA sequences appear in modern African populations, despite the fact that Neanderthals never lived in Africa. This suggests complex patterns of back migration and population mixing. Similarly, some modern humans carry DNA from Denisovans, another archaic human species, despite limited evidence of geographical overlap between the populations. This suggests more extensive interactions between ancient human groups than the fossil record indicates. Perhaps most surprisingly, genetic studies have detected evidence of even earlier interbreeding events. Some analyses suggest an ancient intermixing between Neanderthal ancestors and Denisovan ancestors, before either group encountered modern humans. This creates a picture of repeated interbreeding events throughout human evolution, not an anomalous occurrence, but a recurring pattern whenever distinct human populations encountered each other after periods of separation. Some genetic evidence even hints at contributions from ghost populations, archaic human groups that left genetic signatures in modern humans, but for whom we have no fossil record. These ghosts exist only as echoes in our DNA. One such ghost population appears to have contributed genes to Denisovans. Another may have interbred with the ancestors of modern Africans. These phantom lineages suggest our evolutionary history is far more intricate than fossil evidence alone indicates. The timing of Neanderthal disappearance presents another puzzle. The conventional timeline suggested they vanished around 40,000 years ago. But newer evidence indicates they persisted in isolated pockets much longer, perhaps, until 28,000 years ago in Gibraltar. This extended coexistence provides more opportunities for cultural exchange and interbreeding than previously recognized. It suggests a gradual absorption rather than rapid replacement in some regions. Recent genetic work suggests some Neanderthal gene variants underwent adaptive sweeps in modern humans, spreading rapidly through populations because they provided significant benefits. This indicates active selection for, not just passive retention of, Neanderthal DNA. One striking example involves genes affecting how the immune system recognizes pathogens. Neanderthal variants of these genes appear to have spread rapidly through Eurasian populations, suggesting they provided critical protection against local diseases. This raises a provocative question. To what extent did borrowing genetic adaptations from Neanderthals and other archaic humans accelerate our species' global expansion? Did this genetic exchange give Homo sapiens a crucial advantage? In effect, did we outcompete other human species partly by absorbing their locally adapted genes? This would represent a form of evolutionary success through incorporation rather than simple replacement, a profoundly different narrative of human origins. The evidence increasingly suggests that our evolution wasn't a linear march of progress, but a complex, branching and reconnection of lineages, less a tree and more a network, with genes flowing between branches. This network model challenges fundamental assumptions about human uniqueness and superiority. if our success partially stems from incorporating adaptations from other human lineages. Perhaps we should view ourselves as a synthesis rather than a replacement. Ultimately, these myths and out-of-place findings converge toward a profound realization. The boundaries between human groups have always been more permeable than we imagined, biologically, culturally, and conceptually. The story that emerges is not one of modern human exceptionalism and triumph, but of connection, exchange, and synthesis across populations that were different yet fundamentally compatible. A story written in our genes, artifacts, and perhaps even our oldest myths. Chapter 7. The Echo in Our Cells. The implications of our hybrid origins stretch far beyond academic curiosity, as we deepen our understanding of the Neanderthal contribution to our genome. The stakes of this scientific detective story continue to escalate in unexpected and profound ways. Recent research has revealed that Neanderthal DNA influences far more aspects of our biology than previously recognized. These ancient genetic echoes affect our immune response, metabolism, skin, pain perception, mood regulation, and potentially even aspects of brain function. During the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists made a startling discovery. A particular segment of Neanderthal DNA on chromosome 3 significantly increased the risk of severe COVID-19, doubling the likelihood of respiratory failure in infected individuals. This same genetic region is carried by approximately 50% of people in South Asia and 16% of Europeans today. It offered an immediate explanation for some of the population differences in COVID-19's severity observed during the pandemic. Conversely, researchers identified another Neanderthal genetic variant that appears to protect against severe COVID-19. This protective sequence is common in all populations outside Africa, providing a counterbalance to the risk variant. This discovery dramatically raises the stakes of our investigation. The ancient genetic legacy we carry from Neanderthals continues to influence matters of life and death today, thousands of generations after those prehistoric encounters. Beyond infectious disease, Neanderthal DNA influences our susceptibility to numerous modern health conditions. Studies have linked Neanderthal genes to increased risk of depression, addiction, blood clotting disorders, skin lesions, and certain autoimmune diseases. On the positive side, some Neanderthal variants appear to enhance wound healing, improve immune response to certain pathogens, and help regulate metabolism in ways that might have helped our ancestors survive food scarcity. The picture that emerges is complex. Neanderthal genes weren't universally beneficial or harmful. They were adaptations to specific environments and challenges, now operating in radically different contexts thousands of years later. What made a gene advantageous during the Ice Age might create vulnerability in our modern world of abundance, reduced physical activity, and novel environmental exposures. Evolution optimizes for reproductive success, not necessarily for health or longevity. As our ability to analyze ancient DNA improves, we're identifying increasingly specific effects of Neanderthal genes. One fascinating example involves genes affecting keratin, a protein critical for skin, hair, and nail formation. Neanderthals possessed keratin variants that likely helped them adapt to cold, dry European climates. Many Europeans and Asians today carry these same variants, which influence skin barrier function, UV protection, and water retention. Another remarkable discovery involves a Neanderthal gene variant that affects pain sensitivity, carried by an estimated 0.4% of present-day Britons. This variant appears to lower the threshold for pain perception, essentially making carriers more sensitive to pain. Why would increased pain sensitivity be beneficial? One hypothesis suggests heightened sensitivity might promote injury avoidance and more careful behavior in dangerous environments, a potential advantage in harsh Ice Age conditions. Even more intriguing are the Neanderthal genes that influence brain function. Studies have identified Neanderthal variants that affect gene expression in the basal ganglia and cerebellum, brain regions involved in movement coordination, procedural learning, and habit formation. Other Neanderthal sequences influence gene expression in the primary visual cortex, potentially affecting how carriers process visual information. Could some aspects of how we see and interpret the world carry the imprint of Neanderthal perception? The stakes extend beyond individual health to fundamental questions about human identity and potential. If significant elements of what we consider human cognition and behavior have been shaped by Neanderthal genes, how should we understand human uniqueness? This question becomes especially pressing as we identify Neanderthal influences on brain regions associated with social behavior, emotional processing, and language, the very faculties we often consider quintessentially human. Some researchers have proposed that the combination of cognitive adaptations from different human lineages might have created novel capacities beyond what either population possessed separately, a kind of hybrid vigor for the brain. Could the cultural explosion that occurred in early modern human populations after leaving Africa, the rapid development of sophisticated art, technology, and symbolic expression have been partially fueled by genetic contributions from Neanderthals? This possibility raises the stakes dramatically. What we celebrate as uniquely human achievements, our art, technology, and cultural complexity, might stem partly from the genetic merger of previously distinct and evolutionary experiments in being human. The scientific stakes are escalating as well. New methods for analyzing ancient DNA and detecting its influence in modern genomes are revealing ever more precise patterns of inheritance and adaptation across human populations. Researchers can now identify specific Neanderthal gene variants, determine when they entered the modern human lineage, track how they spread through ancient populations, and measure how selection pressures acted upon them over time. This emerging field of paleogenomics is revolutionizing our understanding of human evolution. Rather than relying solely on fossil morphology, we can track the molecular signatures of adaptation and population mixing with unprecedented precision. The stakes extend into medicine as well. Understanding which parts of our genome come from Neanderthals could help explain why certain populations respond differently to medications, face different disease risks, or develop different symptoms from the same condition. This knowledge could potentially inform personalized medicine, allowing treatments to be tailored based partly on an individual's archaic genetic inheritance. What once seemed like ancient history now has direct relevance to modern healthcare. Beyond medicine, these discoveries challenge fundamental narratives about human uniqueness and superiority. The evidence increasingly suggests we didn't simply outcompete other human species through inherent advantages. We incorporated their genetic innovations into our own lineage. This represents a profound shift in how we understand our evolutionary success. Rather than triumphing through separation and superiority, we may have thrived through connection and incorporation, absorbing beneficial adaptations from multiple human lineages. As this research advances, the stakes continue to rise. Each new discovery reveals more extensive and significant Neanderthal contributions to modern human biology, forcing us to reconsider what it means to be fully human. The conceptual boundaries we've drawn between us and them, between modern and archaic, between human and non-human, grow increasingly blurred as we recognize the hybrid nature of our genome and the complex legacy of our evolutionary past. Perhaps most profound are the philosophical stakes. If we carry the genetic heritage of multiple human lineages, each with their own unique evolutionary history and adaptations, what does this mean for concepts of human essence or nature? Are we fundamentally one thing or a mosaic of many? Does our hybrid genome suggest that openness to the other, the willingness to incorporate difference rather than reject it, might be central to our evolutionary success? The political stakes cannot be ignored either. Throughout history, groups have used perceived biological differences to justify hierarchies, exclusion, and violence. How might our understanding of shared ancestry and hybrid origins challenge these divisive narratives? All non-African populations carry Neanderthal DNA, and if these contributions have proven vital to our success as a species, how might this inform our thinking about human difference and commonality in the present? As we look toward the future, the stakes escalate further. Technologies like CRISPR gene editing now make it theoretically possible to modify or remove Neanderthal sequences from the human genome. But should we? These ancient genes have been subject to natural selection for tens of thousands of years. They've been tested through countless environmental challenges and have proven their value. Tampering with this legacy carries profound risks. Conversely, could we potentially recover lost Neanderthal genes not preserved in any living human population? As we sequence more Neanderthal genomes, we identify beneficial adaptations that didn't make it into our lineage. The ethical questions multiply. What responsibility do we have toward this genetic heritage? Does the Neanderthal contribution to our genome deserve special consideration or protection as we develop technologies that could alter our genetic future? Perhaps most dramatically. Some researchers have speculated about the possibility of eventually resurrecting Neanderthals through advanced genetic technology, creating an individual with a predominantly Neanderthal genome, while technically far beyond our current capabilities and ethically problematic. This possibility forces us to confront questions about our relationship to our evolutionary cousins. Would such a being be considered human? What rights would they have? As we peer deeper into our genetic past, the stakes continue to escalate. What began as a scientific curiosity, did Neanderthals and humans interbreed, has expanded into a fundamental reassessment of who we are and how we came to be. The evidence increasingly suggests that the story of humanity isn't one of isolated development and triumph, but of connection, exchange, and synthesis, a complex conversation between lineages written in the molecular language of DNA. And the most profound realization may be this: the Neanderthals weren't simply an evolutionary dead end replaced by superior modern humans. Through their genetic contributions, they live on as an integral part of who we are today. Their legacy persists not just in museum displays and scientific papers, but in the functioning of our immune systems, the structure of our skin, the wiring of our brains, an echo of ancient encounters that continues to shape our biology and perhaps even our consciousness. As we continue our exploration, one question looms larger than all others. If we are, in part, Neanderthal, if their genetic legacy shapes fundamental aspects of our biology, what does this reveal about the true nature of humanity? Chapter 8. Competing explanations as we've explored the evidence of Neanderthal-human interbreeding and its consequences. Several competing theories have emerged to explain this pivotal chapter in human evolution. Each framework offers different interpretations of the same genetic evidence, with profound implications for understanding who we are. The first major theory we might call the absorption model. This perspective suggests that interbreeding wasn't merely incidental, but played a central role in Neanderthal disappearance. Rather than being replaced through competition or conflict, Neanderthals were gradually absorbed into the larger Homo sapiens population. According to this model, as modern humans moved into Neanderthal territories, the two populations began interacting, trading, and eventually interbreeding. Over generations, the Neanderthal population was effectively absorbed, with their genetic contribution diluted but preserved within the expanding human population. This theory is supported by the gradual disappearance of distinctly Neanderthal features in the fossil record and the persistence of their genetic legacy. It suggests a relatively peaceful process of genetic and cultural merger rather than violent replacement. Anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus, who has studied potential hybrid specimens extensively, argues that this absorption process likely varied by region. In some areas, extensive interbreeding may have occurred, while in others, populations remained more separate before Neanderthals eventually disappeared. The absorption model challenges traditional narratives of human superiority and conquest, suggesting instead a more complex history of interaction, exchange, and gradual merger between distinct but compatible human lineages. The second framework, which we might call the adaptive introgression model, focuses on natural selection's role in preserving beneficial Neanderthal genes while eliminating harmful ones. This theory emphasizes the selective advantage certain Neanderthal traits provided to hybrid offspring. According to this model, specific Neanderthal genes offered significant adaptive advantages in Eurasian environments, particularly immune system enhancements, skin adaptations to different UV exposure levels, and metabolic adjustments to different food sources. Natural selection would have strongly favored hybrid individuals carrying these beneficial Neanderthal variants, causing these genes to spread rapidly through the expanding human population even if interbreeding events were relatively rare. This theory is supported by the non-random distribution of Neanderthal DNA in modern genomes. Neanderthal sequences cluster in regions involving immune function, skin biology, and metabolism, while being notably absent from regions controlling brain development and reproduction. Proponents of this view, including evolutionary geneticist Svante Pääbo, suggest that even limited interbreeding could have major genetic consequences if the transferred genes provided significant survival or reproductive advantages in specific environments. This model implies that our species succeeded not through intrinsic superiority, but through a kind of genetic opportunism, an ability to incorporate beneficial adaptations from other human lineages that had already adjusted to local conditions. A third framework, the demographic swamping model, focuses on population dynamics. It suggests that while interbreeding occurred, Neanderthals' disappearance resulted primarily from being outnumbered by waves of incoming modern humans rather than from direct competition or conflict. According to this model, modern humans expanding out of Africa simply had demographic advantages, larger population sizes, higher reproduction rates, or better connected social networks. Even with peaceful coexistence and interbreeding, Neanderthals would have been gradually swamped by the more numerous newcomers. Paleoanthropologist Jean-Jacques Hublin suggests that even a small reproductive advantage, perhaps modern humans having slightly shorter intervals between births, would, over generations, lead to Neanderthals being numerically overwhelmed and their distinctive features diluted in the larger population. This theory is supported by archaeological evidence suggesting modern humans lived in larger, more connected social groups than Neanderthals, and by genetic evidence indicating bottlenecks in Neanderthal populations before modern human arrival. The demographic swamping model suggests that Neanderthals didn't necessarily fail due to competitive disadvantages, but were simply outnumbered in a process that would have appeared gradual from the perspective of those living through it. These competing frameworks aren't mutually exclusive. Each may capture different aspects of a complex historical process that varied across regions and timeframes. The truth likely incorporates elements from all three models. For instance, demographic advantages may have made modern humans the dominant population, while selective pressures preserved beneficial Neanderthal genes in this expanding population, ultimately resulting in Neanderthal absorption rather than complete replacement. Archaeological evidence suggests different dynamics in different regions. In some areas, Neanderthal tools and techniques persisted longer, suggesting more cultural exchange and possibly more genetic mixing, while in others, the transition to modern human technologies was more abrupt. The evidence of multiple interbreeding episodes at different times and places further complicates the picture. Rather than a single encounter and outcome, we're seeing a complex pattern of interactions spanning thousands of years and multiple regions. Recent genomic studies suggest at least 3 separate pulses of interbreeding. One soon after humans left Africa around 50,000 to 55,000 years ago, another in the Middle East, and a third in Eastern Europe or Asia. These multiple episodes suggest a recurring pattern of interaction whenever the two populations encountered each other, rather than an anomalous event. This implies that, despite physical and possibly cultural differences, the two groups recognized enough commonality to form relationships. Another crucial question these competing theories must address is, if interbreeding was biologically possible and apparently occurred multiple times, why did Neanderthals disappear as a distinct population rather than persisting alongside modern humans? One compelling explanation integrates elements from all three models. modern humans held demographic advantages that made them the dominant population, while cultural and technological differences gave them ecological advantages in certain contexts. Simultaneously, natural selection favored certain Neanderthal adaptations, which spread through the hybrid population. The result was not replacement, but a new population carrying primarily modern human ancestry with strategic Neanderthal contributions. This integrated model suggests that what we're seeing in a genetic record isn't the story of one population replacing another, but rather of two populations merging unevenly, with modern humans contributing more to the final mixture, but with significant Neanderthal influences preserved. If this integrated model is correct, then the question, why did Neanderthals go extinct, requires reconceptualization. In a genetic sense, they didn't entirely disappear. Portions of their genome continue to influence human biology today. Perhaps most significantly, these competing explanations challenge us to reconsider what constitutes evolutionary success. If contributing genes to future generations represents a form of evolutionary persistence, then Neanderthals achieved a kind of partial survival. Their lineage as a distinct population ended, but their genetic innovations continue to influence human biology today. From this perspective, Neanderthals represent not an evolutionary dead end, but a tributary that merged with the larger river of human evolution. As we continue to uncover evidence and refine these theories, one conclusion seems increasingly clear. Our evolutionary history was not a linear march of progress, but a complex network of populations separating and reconnecting, competing and cooperating, replacing and absorbing. The true story of human origins appears to be not one of simple replacement through superiority, but of integration, adaptation, and synthesis, a recognition that challenges traditional narratives and forces us to reconsider what it means to be human. Chapter 9. Breaking Through Barriers. Recent scientific breakthroughs have revolutionized our understanding of Neanderthal-human interactions, revealing a picture far more complex than initially imagined. Advanced ancient DNA recovery techniques now allow us to extract genetic material from fossils previously considered too degraded for analysis. In 2018, researchers made a stunning discovery by sequencing DNA from a 90,000-year-old bone fragment found in Denisova Cave, Russia. The individual nicknamed Denny was a first-generation hybrid with a Neanderthal mother and Denisovan father. This remarkable finding provided direct evidence of interbreeding between different human species and suggested such mating wasn't uncommon. Denny's existence proves these distinct human lineages not only encountered each other, but produced offspring together. Even more recently, researchers identified another first-generation hybrid from Bacho Kiro Cave in Bulgaria. This individual, living around 45,000 years ago, had a Neanderthal ancestor just a few generations back in their family tree. These discoveries of first-generation or near first-generation hybrids resolve a key paradox in the genetic record. If interbreeding was as rare as previously thought, how did Neanderthal DNA become so widely distributed in non-African populations? The answer appears to be that interbreeding wasn't rare at all. These recent findings suggest that when different human populations encountered each other, they regularly interbred, producing hybrid offspring who themselves reproduced and spread both lineages' genetic contributions. Another scientific breakthrough involves the identification of specific Neanderthal genes and their functions in modern humans. New computational techniques can now pinpoint exactly which gene variants came from Neanderthals and what biological processes they influence. One fascinating discovery involves genes affecting how the immune system recognizes and responds to viruses. A 2020 study found that a significant portion of the genetic variants influencing COVID-19 severity originated in Neanderthals. This finding revealed a stark paradox. The same Neanderthal genetic heritage that helped our ancestors survive prehistoric pathogens could either protect against or increase vulnerability to a novel modern virus depending on the specific variant inherited. Another breakthrough involves Neanderthal influence on brain development. Recent studies have identified Neanderthal gene variants that affect the expression of synaptic proteins, molecules that facilitate communication between neurons, potentially influencing cognitive functions. This creates a profound paradox. If Neanderthal genes influence our brain function today, where do we draw the line between Neanderthal and human cognition? Perhaps what we consider uniquely human thinking partially derives from Neanderthal contributions. Advanced imaging techniques applied to brain organoids, miniature brain-like structures, grown in laboratories, now allow scientists to observe how specific Neanderthal gene variants affect neural development and function at the cellular level. These studies reveal that Neanderthal variants can alter the shape, connectivity, and electrophysiological properties of neurons. Such changes might subtly influence how modern carriers process information, perceive the world, or regulate emotions. This research presents a fascinating paradox. Certain aspects of what we experience as our consciousness, our thoughts, perceptions, and feelings, may be partially shaped by genetic contributions from another human species that disappeared 40,000 years ago. Beyond the brain, new research has identified Neanderthal influences on pain perception. A particular Neanderthal gene variant affects the structure of an ion channel that transmits pain signals, potentially making carriers more sensitive to certain types of pain. This creates another paradox: traits that may have been adaptive in Ice Age. Environments like heightened pain sensitivity that could prevent injury may become disadvantageous in modern contexts, contributing to chronic pain conditions or pain hypersensitivity. Revolutionary advances in paleoproteomics, the study of ancient proteins, now allows scientists to identify the biological sex, approximate age, and even diet of ancient individuals from tiny bone fragments previously considered uninformative. These techniques have revealed that Neanderthal populations were more diverse than previously recognized, with regional variations in diet, behavior, and possibly social structures. This challenges simplistic notions of Neanderthals as a monolithic group. Another breakthrough involves the timing of Neanderthals' disappearance. New dating methods suggest Neanderthals persisted in some regions much longer than previously thought, perhaps until 28,000 years ago in Gibraltar, extending the potential period of interaction with modern humans. This extended timeline creates a paradox. If Neanderthals and modern humans coexisted for over 10,000 years in some regions, why do we find relatively few clear hybrid fossils? The apparent contradiction suggests our ability to identify hybrids from skeletal remains may be limited. Recent genetic research has revealed another paradox. While Neanderthal DNA is found throughout non-African populations today, it appears to have been even more common in early European populations shortly after interbreeding occurred. Ancient DNA from early European Homo sapiens shows significantly higher proportions of Neanderthal ancestry than in present-day Europeans. This suggests natural selection actively removed many Neanderthal gene variants over time while preserving others. This selective process creates a profound paradox. Our genome appears to have undergone a complex sorting process, eliminating Neanderthal DNA in certain critical regions while actively preserving it in others where it provided benefits. The most striking example involves immune genes, where Neanderthal variants have been maintained at much higher frequencies than would be expected by chance. This suggests these genes provided crucial advantages that natural selection strongly favored. Conversely, Neanderthal DNA is notably absent from genes involved in male fertility and certain aspects of brain development. This pattern suggests hybrid males may have faced reduced fertility, creating a selection pressure against these particular Neanderthal sequences. Another breakthrough involves the discovery of archaic ancestry deserts, regions of the modern genome completely devoid of Neanderthal DNA. These deserts often contain genes crucial for brain development and reproductive function. This creates a telling paradox. While our species readily incorporated Neanderthal adaptations for immunity, metabolism, and skin function, certain neurological and reproductive differences may have represented genuine biological barriers between the species. Recent work has also identified Neanderthal contributions to gene regulation, the complex systems that control when and where genes are activated. These regulatory elements can influence multiple genes and bodily systems simultaneously. This discovery suggests Neanderthal influence extends beyond protein-coding genes to the regulatory networks that orchestrate development and bodily functions. Their contribution to our genome is more pervasive and complex than initially recognized. Perhaps most paradoxically, new evidence suggests that even after tens of thousands of years of integration, the human genome is still adapting to and reconciling its mixed heritage. Some Neanderthal sequences continue to be selected against in modern populations. This ongoing genomic reconciliation process suggests that the biological compatibility between Neanderthals and modern humans was incomplete. Tens of thousands of years later, our genome is still working to optimize the combination of these two evolutionary lineages. Another breakthrough involves the development of sophisticated computational models that can predict how Neanderthal genes might have spread through prehistoric populations under different scenarios of interaction, selection pressure, and demographic change. These models suggest that the current distribution of Neanderthal DNA couldn't have resulted from just a few isolated interbreeding events. Rather, they support a scenario of recurring gene flow between the populations whenever they overlapped geographically. Recent paleoclimatic reconstructions combined with genetic data reveal another paradox. Periods of climate deterioration that created hardship for Neanderthal populations may have simultaneously created opportunities for hybridization as both species were forced into smaller habitable zones. This suggests a complex relationship between climate change, population movements, and interbreeding. Environmental pressures that threatened Neanderthal survival as a distinct population may have paradoxically ensured their partial genetic survival through hybridization. The emerging picture from these scientific breakthroughs is one of remarkable complexity. What began as a simple question, did humans and Neanderthals interbreed, has revealed a multidimensional story of interaction, adaptation, selection, and genomic integration spanning tens of thousands of years. The central paradox may be this: while Neanderthals disappeared as a distinct population, they achieved a kind of genetic immortality through their contributions to our genome. Their biological legacy continues to influence human health, adaptation, and possibly even cognition today. As we break through new scientific barriers, each discovery reveals further layers of complexity in our shared history with Neanderthals. Far from resolving paradoxes, our advancing knowledge continues to uncover new ones, challenging us to develop more sophisticated models of human evolution. Chapter 10. The Mosaic Truth. We began this exploration with a fundamental question. How did mating with Neanderthals change us forever? After examining the evidence and competing theories, we can now approach the profound truth that has emerged from decades of research. The answer isn't simple or singular. It's a multifaceted revelation that transforms our understanding of human identity. The evidence converges toward an inescapable conclusion. We are not purely Homo sapiens. We are, and have long been, a hybrid species. Our genome represents a complex mosaic, predominantly Homo sapiens, but interwoven with significant contributions from Neanderthals and other archaic humans. This hybrid nature isn't peripheral to our identity, but central to what makes us human in the modern sense. The most revolutionary revelation is this: the traits we consider quintessentially human, our adaptability, resilience, innovative capacity, and global distribution, may stem directly from our mixed ancestry. Our hybrid genome isn't incidental to our success, but foundational to it. Consider the timeline of human innovation, the dramatic acceleration in technological and cultural complexity. What archaeologists call the Upper Paleolithic Revolution coincides with the period after modern humans encountered and interbred with Neanderthals. This correlation doesn't prove causation, but it raises a compelling possibility. Could the merging of these distinct cognitive lineages have created novel neural architectures capable of unprecedented innovation? Did hybridization catalyze a cognitive revolution? The evidence increasingly suggests that human adaptability stems partly from our capacity to incorporate genetic innovations from multiple lineages. Rather than relying solely on mutation and selection within a single population, we absorbed pre-tested adaptations from other human groups. This represents a profound shift in how we understand human evolution. Our success may derive not from replacing other human species, but from absorbing them, not from genetic purity, but from genetic exchange and integration. The specific traits we inherited from Neanderthals reveal another aspect of this truth. The Neanderthal sequences preserved in our genome aren't random but cluster around functions where their adaptations provided significant benefits. Our immune system, in particular, carries a strong Neanderthal imprint. Having evolved in Eurasian environments for hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals developed effective responses to local pathogens that our African ancestors had never encountered. By incorporating these pre-adapted immune variants, early human Neanderthal hybrids gained immediate protection against unfamiliar diseases. This immunological head start may have been crucial to our ancestors' survival as they expanded into new territories. Similar patterns appear in genes controlling skin and hair. Neanderthal variants affecting keratin production, pigmentation, and sweat glands helped our ancestors adapt to different climates, UV exposure levels, and humidity conditions as they spread globally. Perhaps most intriguingly, certain Neanderthal genes influencing brain function have been preserved in modern populations. These include variants affecting synaptic connections, neurotransmitter systems, and the development of specific brain regions. While we can't precisely determine how these neural variants influence cognition, their preservation suggests they provided advantages significant enough for natural selection to maintain them across thousands of generations despite potential incompatibilities with the Homo sapiens genome. This leads to a profound insight. What we experience as human consciousness today may be partially shaped by neural architectures that evolved separately in different human lineages and later combined through interbreeding. Your thoughts, perceptions, emotional responses, and cognitive tendencies may be influenced by neural adaptations that originally evolved in Neanderthals. Your very consciousness may be, in some sense, a hybrid phenomenon. This hybridization wasn't limited to Neanderthals. We now have evidence that early modern humans interbred with Denisovans in Asia, and possibly with other archaic humans in Africa whose fossils we haven't yet discovered. Each of these interbreeding events contributed additional adaptations to our genetic repertoire. Tibetan high-altitude adaptation, for instance, comes from a Denisovan gene variant that helps the body cope with low-oxygen environments. The emerging truth is radical. We are a species that has repeatedly incorporated genetic material from other human lineages whenever we encountered them. This pattern of hybridization may be fundamental to our evolutionary strategy, rather than a tree with separate branches. Human evolution increasingly resembles a network where lineages diverge and then reconnect, sharing adaptations and creating new combinations that can thrive in diverse environments. This network model challenges traditional concepts of species boundaries in human evolution. If distinct human lineages could repeatedly interbreed and produce viable, fertile offspring, were they truly separate species in a biological sense? Perhaps we need to reconceptualize the human evolutionary story, not as a series of replacements, modern humans outcompeting and replacing archaic ones, but as a complex process of divergence, reconnection, and synthesis. The revelation extends beyond biology into philosophy. If our genome is a mosaic with contributions from multiple human lineages, what does this mean for concepts of human uniqueness, identity, and nature? It suggests that what makes us human in the modern sense isn't genetic purity, but precisely the opposite. Our hybrid vigor, our biological synthesis of different evolutionary experiments in being human. This genomic flexibility may be our greatest evolutionary innovation. Rather than developing all adaptations internally, we've repeatedly absorbed beneficial traits from related lineages, accelerating our adaptive capacity and global spread. The timing of these hybridization events proves critical. They occurred just as our species was expanding beyond Africa into diverse environments with novel challenges, exactly when such pre-adapted genetic variants would provide the greatest advantage. This creates a revolutionary new narrative of human origins. Rather than conquering the world through inherent superiority, we succeeded through assimilation and incorporation, absorbing beneficial adaptations from populations already adjusted to local conditions. In essence, our ancestors weren't simply better than other human species. They were more open to genetic exchange, more capable of incorporating difference, more willing to cross the boundaries between populations. This openness to genetic exchange may itself be an adaptation, a recognition at some level that incorporating diversity strengthens rather than weakens the population. If so, it represents a profound evolutionary strategy that remains relevant today. The final revelation brings us full circle to our opening question: how did mating with Neanderthals change us forever? The answer is now clear. It made us who we are. Without these interbreeding events and the adaptive advantages they conferred, our species might not have successfully expanded across the globe. We might not have developed the remarkable adaptability that characterizes humanity. The Neanderthal within you isn't a trivial genetic footnote or a primeval curiosity. It represents a fundamental aspect of what makes you human in the modern sense, a living testament to our species' capacity to incorporate difference and transform it into advantage. This hybrid heritage challenges us to reconsider fundamental questions of human identity. Where do we draw the line between us and them when they are literally part of us? How should this biological reality inform our thinking about human difference and commonality? Perhaps the most profound revelation is philosophical. Our evolutionary success may stem not from domination and replacement, but from connection and incorporation, not from maintaining genetic boundaries, but from crossing them. If this integrated, networked model of human evolution is correct, then the story of humanity isn't one of inherent superiority and inevitable triumph. It's a story of adaptation through assimilation, of strength through synthesis, of innovation through incorporation. The ultimate revelation is both humbling and empowering. We succeeded not because we were better than other human species, but because we were able to become more than just ourselves, incorporating their adaptations, innovations, and perspectives into our own evolving identity. This is the mosaic truth of human origins. You're not purely one thing, but a synthesis of many, a living embodiment of evolutionary connection and exchange. And that hybrid nature doesn't diminish our uniqueness, but constitutes its very essence. As we conclude our journey through the complex story of Neanderthal-human interbreeding, we return to where we began, to that moment tens of thousands of years ago, when two types of humans, separated by hundreds of millennia of separate evolution, encountered each other once again. In that encounter, we find a mirror that reflects something profound about our humanity. Despite obvious differences in appearance, despite millennia of separate adaptation and cultural development, these two populations recognized enough kinship to form the most intimate bonds. This recognition of commonality across difference may be the most human trait of all, the capacity to see beyond surface variations to deeper connections. Our ancestors didn't just compete with Neanderthals. They connected with them, creating bonds that would permanently alter our species' trajectory. The legacy of these ancient connections lives on in our bodies, influencing our immune responses, our skin, and possibly even how our brains process the world. We carry the echo of these encounters in every cell, a living testament to boundaries crossed and worlds merged. Perhaps this is the ultimate lesson of our exploration, that human evolution has always involved the exchange of genes and ideas across populations, the incorporation of difference into new syntheses, the recognition of connection despite apparent division. Our hybrid nature challenges us to reconsider what it means to be human. If our very biology represents the merger of one separate lineages, perhaps our humanity resides not in genetic purity or separation, but in our capacity for connection across boundaries. As you consider the Neanderthal within, remember that you embody a profound evolutionary truth. We are not defined by our separateness, but by our connections. Our strength comes not from isolation, but from integration, not from replacement, but from synthesis. Next time you look in the mirror, remember you're seeing more than just Homo sapiens reflected back. You're witnessing the living legacy of an ancient encounter between two worlds that became one, a legacy that continues to shape who we are and who we might become. If you enjoyed this exploration of our hybrid origins, subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the hidden histories that made us human.